Okay, fine.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
So now I'm going to say something about big data analytics and its application. In this session, I will expect something from you. In case of AIML, there was no expectation. It is very much new technology to you, but without big data analytics or data analytics, it's very difficult to manage AIML. Number one. Number two, big data analytics without any background knowledge, it's very difficult to process with big data analytics. For me, I am telling you, I am not in big data analytics in that way, but for last couple of years, I am associated with application development, where my primary role was to data management, data warehousing, data mining. I don't know how many of you are really aware of those terminologies: database, data management, data warehouse, and business intelligence, data mining. I will touch those things because without a specific knowledge on those terminologies and implementation, it is really difficult to understand big data analytics. Uh, as the terminology says, big data analytics. So three things are there. One is data, another one is big data, and third one is the analytics. Three things I am going to explain. First point is, if we say big data, so obvious question is there something called small data? Is there any threshold? If the data volume goes beyond it, in that case, we'll take it as a big data, otherwise it will be small data. Unfortunately, no, that kind of concept is not there. I'm coming to that point slowly. So in the very beginning, in big data analytics, I will explain you regarding conventional data management. If your non-verbal communication was available in that case, probably I will be able to skip something, but here I have to cover the entire thing. But I will try to touch upon those points where it's assumed that most of the person are today aware of those things. So first point is conventional data management. Second one is big data. And third one is data management towards big data analytics. A few minutes ago, somebody asked this question, whether implementation of AIML will be a costly affair or not. So costly affair, it will be if you have to create your own infrastructure for data management as well. But fortunately, we can make use of data management models already available, and there's a cloud infrastructure for deploying your this thing solution. And the last part, I will tell you about some applications for agriculture, just like the previous presentation, right? So let me move to the first part. Well, when you did your first computer program, probably say for example, hello world kind of thing, right? So or it will ask for your name in the beginning, and whenever you are typing something XYZ, it will give you the output hello XYZ. That means computer is not preserving anything, only your input will be processed on the fly, and that will be presented in front of you. That was the first component. Now later, assume you have to preserve the data somewhere which is reproducible. As and when required, that will be produced. So in that case, in the programming paradigm, probably you have, did some program using flat file based management system. That means your data will be preserved in a flat file, which is reproducible, and later you, manage database also, database management system. I don't know how many of you are aware of it. From this picture, let us assume first one is information system, and 1, 2, 3, 4 files are there. It's a star kind of arrangement. That means your application is running and you are preserving your data in more than one file, right? Say for example, your university management system, probably you created one file which will preserve the students' information, name, address, etc. Another one file for preserving the students' education related information, like how many exams they appeared for, how many exams, and what is the score for XYZ subject, etc. Another one file you may create for preserving the information related to the teacher, and fourth one may be related to subject, etc. That means one application and more than one file is there. Unfortunately, those files are dedicated because format defined by you. If somebody else would like to read those files, probably he will not, not be able to produce any readable information. That is also possible because unformatted data file and formatted data file of two concept was there. Then automatically the technology shifted towards database management system where you need them to reinvent the wheel all the time. One database management engine is already there, which will take care of reading, writing, etc., etc. Only thing you have to define your own structure. You have to give input for the data, which will be preserved in the database, and later someone else, maybe through some other application or maybe through some query which is named as SQL, structured query language kind of thing, they can reproduce the result whatever you have preserved. So this is the basic difference between files versus database. Why I am explaining those things, I will explain it later, but just try to keep it in mind. In flat file based system, the pros and cons was, although flat file based system is very easy to design, excellent performance due to optimized organization because only one person is using it. But that is the disadvantage for your future application. Whenever you are generating the data, it is not expecting you are the only person who will use that data. Someone else also make use of the data. Number one. Number two, performance may not be excellent, but you have to share your data. You cannot expect only single application will make use of the data. Correct. Today we are producing the weather information or something, or say for example this WebEx. I am using this WebEx for this presentation. Someone else is also using the WebEx. So web-based database management system is there in between. They are preserving the data. Only single application dedicated for this channel from me to Visa will not work. And in case of database, data independence form of application increases the adaptability and flexibility. Obviously, you can create a new table, automatically your system will take care of it. SQL, since the structure is common, SQL can understand and represent the data. Superior scalability, obviously there is no restriction. In a flat file based system, even Excel also, if you want to preserve something in Excel, there is a limitation. Total number of rows and total number of columns are limited. But in case of your database, there is no restriction as such. I mean, they may impose some restriction based on licensing issue. If it's not licensed, in that case, you are restricted to insert this many data, etc., etc. But that is not the real scenario. Ability to share data across the application, less and control redundancy. Redundancy control is very important because in flat file based system, if you really want to preserve the student information in one file and student marks, score, etc. related information in another file, probably you have to preserve the name of the student in both of the files. So if somebody by mistake, did some spelling mistake in the name of a student, that it is that person's responsibility to modify the data in both the files, not in a single one. But in case of database, it's possible. Only you make the changes in a single table, automatically it will get reflected across the application. Not automatically, actually your design should support that. And how you can design it, that also, that slide is also there, I think. I will touch upon that. Pros and cons of database. I need not to write, already explain it. Why database? Redundancy can be reduced, already explained. Inconsistency can be avoided. Obviously, if you can reduce the redundancy, inconsistency will not be there. If a person has to modify the data in more than one places, in that case, probably it's a human, there may have some human error. He could modify one file and forget to modify another one file. That kind of thing might be there. So obviously there will be some inconsistency. But in case of database, only you have to modify in one place, automatically it will get reflected, across the application. Data can be shared. Yes, it can be shared. Standards can be enforced. Obviously, standard means, you can put some restriction. In a flat file based system, you cannot put that kind of restriction. See, name field can expect alphanumeric, mainly alphabets only. In the mobile number field, it will expect only numeric thing, and the length of the that data should be 10 at least, 10 or 11. Say if we put 0 in front of it. So that kind of restriction you cannot impose. In case of database, you can impose that restriction. Security restrictions can be applied. Who can make use of this data? Everybody will not be able to change. In a flat file based system, if you get the access of that machine, you can even delete the data file. But in case of database, that is not there. if you have the privilege or role, in that case only you will be able to do something. Integrity can be maintained. Integrity will be maintained. How that I think one slide is there in normalization. I need not to explain in depth, but I will, if the slide is there, I will explain it. Conflicting requirement can be balanced. Okay. So physically data stored in some combination of conventional files, operational database, and data warehouses. Already I covered conventional files and operational databases, right? If you have any question, you raise your hand. I will answer that part. Otherwise, I will skip this part because my intention is to explain something on the area of big data. Distribution and replication. Say data distribution analysis, how data will be distributed in case of database. Centralization, number one. Centralization means enter database in a single server in one physical location and more than one person can get access of it. Say, for example, when we try to find out the result of any exam, in that case, database is kept in a central server and everybody is accessing it through their web application or mobile apps. Horizontal distribution, it's also called partitioning. One table can be split into different part. Why? Because say for example, railway reservation system. I mean, if I want, say, the data set consists of all the stations name, etc., etc. But if I want to purchase a ticket from here, it is expected that the station's local station's name is sufficient for issuing those tickets, and it need not to preserve the in some station of Jharkhand or etc. name of the Jharkhand etc. here because they are only issuing local train tickets. So obviously the data can be distributed horizontally, which is relevant for a particular area that can be kept in that place for quick access. Vertical distribution, once again, this is two things can be there. Tables can be split into multiple tables, which is called normalization. And even in one table, more than one column can be clubbed up and it can be separated. This is called horizontal partitioning. We need not to explain it in depth. Those are some few technical things. Replication, data duplicate in multiple location, it's important. Replication is important because your replicated data, here the database itself is getting replicated. Let me reiterate, this point is important in terms of big data. That's why I'm reiterating. In case of database, data duplication is possible. That means the database will be distributed in more than one location and same data will be preserved in those locations. Maybe few technologies are there called data guard, active data guard, data mirroring, etc., etc. So many methods of this replication is there, but somehow data should get replicated in real time. What is the advantages? Suppose due to some natural calamity or some accidental situation, one database is not up or one database is not connected, right? In that case, your application will work because another one database is available with same status. So that's why database replication is important. Here I'm telling about database replication, multiple location database replication. In case of big data analytics, the replication will be at block level, at node level. Just point it out, just note it down. Block level and node level. I am coming to that point. Now, one point is performance and accessibility advantages, increase complexity. Obviously, if data replication is there, to maintain consistency is difficult and it will increase the complexity. But anyway, it will give you better performance. I mean, loss of data for 0 seconds. In that way, it will be advantageous also. So there is a, I mean, you have to compromise this maintaining of this complexity with, I mean, to maintain the performance and accessibility advantages. Not required really. I mean, one terms here, these goals are achieved through data normalization. See, 3 points are there. What is database normalization? I will explain, and at that point, I will explain what are the advantages of those model. 3 kind of normalization is sufficient at this point of time. More than 3 normalization are there. One is called first normal form, second one is second normal form, and third one is third normal form. So in first normal form, you have to maintain the data in lowest level of granularity. That is important. So no attribute that can have more than one value for a single instance. Say for example, in a table, if we like to preserve the name, In that case, it is expected that name column for one row, for one person, only one name will be there, right? If a person would like to put more than one name, in that case, probably we have to create two columns for that person. One is I mean, name, another one is say name one or name two, that kind of thing. Anyway, in a single row column, single cross section, you cannot keep more than one value. First thing. Second normal form, all non-primary key attributes should be fully dependent on the primary key. Otherwise, you cannot access that value. Say, with the help of roll number, if you like to get the name of the student, it is easy because there is a mapping, roll number and name. Say, with the help of this roll number, if you would like to get the marks of a particular subject, that is also possible because that is somehow linked with this. But uh, if there is any other information which is not directly relevant to roll, in that case, either and if we have not designed it properly, in that case, what is the occupation of a particular person who is a father of a particular student, using the roll number, probably we will not be able to find it out if we not designed it in that way. So in second normal form, you have to ensure all non-primary key values should be solely dependent on full primary key. And third normal form, third normal form is there should not have any transitive property. All the values should directly depend on the primary key. That's it. And a database should provide efficient storage, etc., not required. Well, usage, throughput, and response time is important. In case of big data analytics, also those are important. Now, coming to the data warehouse component. Already I covered flat file-based system. Then one is the database management system. Now the data warehouse, how it is different from conventional database. In a conventional database, generally we use to preserve the transactional information. That means a railway reservation system, or if you are purchasing something, etc., etc., that is managed there. But if you really want to do some sort of analytics, in that case, say time series analysis, in that case, probably you are dealing with say several years data, 7 or 8 years data. So obviously it will take huge amount of time processing. I mean, issuing a ticket will take 1 second, but processing one information for last 7 years is really difficult. In that case, we have to make some other arrangement which is not preserving data in a conventional mechanism like any OLTP. So that is called data warehouse. And these four terms are very important: subject oriented, integrated, non-volatile, and time variant. See, obviously it's subject oriented for a specific subject. Integrated, data should be integrated, otherwise you will not get any information out of it. Non-volatile, whenever you are generating report, it is expected that during generation of that report, your data will be consistent. No one is modifying it. And time variant. So, I mean, the data volume will be huge. It will preserve historical data for your processing. This is the plus point of data warehouse on top of database. But what are the disadvantages? This OLTP system is not capable of processing OLTP based transaction because that will easily violate this non-volatile characteristics of the design. And it looks like this: database data marts. These are few terminology: database, data marts, and ETL. I will explain it. Say database. Say for example, these are the operational system, OLTP system. One flat file based system, another one is a conventional database management system. Already they are up and running. They are doing a specific job. Say for example, your finance department is doing well with their own database. Your HR section is doing well with their HR information, and maybe your attendance management system is preserving data in a flat file based system. Now you would like to gather some information. You would like to multi-dimensional report based on those data. In that case, you have to take them in the same space and you have to process it. So if I can access those data, for accessing data, there is a specific protocol. It's called HSODBC. So you will create the staging database, and from the staging database, you can create this warehouse. And what is warehouse? Warehouse is basically an infrastructure which is capable of generating multi-dimensional pre-processed report. How? Acha. And data marts is subject oriented, one component of it. And ETL, full form of ETL is extraction, transformation, and loading. You know, you are loading the data into a staging database which is predefined, and you are extracting data from the existing OLTP system. Obviously, the structure of existing OLTP system will be different. Someone is maybe using Oracle 9i, someone is using MySQL, someone is SQL Server, someone is preserving data in flat file-based system, and developed by other companies. So structure is also different. Whenever you are putting them together, that should be consistent in nature. They should be integrated. So in your design, somehow you will extract the data from the existing databases. You will transform it as per your requirement, and you will load it into the staging database. So that's why this ETL term is coming. And so after during this ETL process, missing data, you have to correct this missing data, because missing data will have some impact on analysis. In case of AIML also, I told you, if the data set, training data set or test data set is inconsistent or incomplete, in that case, you cannot expect your model will be, excellent, your model will give 100% accuracy, you cannot expect. So the nature of data is crucial for preparing any AIML model, and missing data is a barrier on that. Data consolidated in decision support system requires consolidation, aggregation, and summarization, etc. There is a standard structure. I think one slide will be there. I am covering data quality. Once again, data quality means you have to ensure key if say cardinality of a particular field. Say for example, in your university management system, and 4 undergraduate courses are there. So it is expected, if total 100 rows are there, so 25 rows you are getting from each stream. If one stream is left out, in that case, your decision or your model may be inconsistent, because that stream may have specific requirement, right? So data quality, maintaining data quality is your part during design of this data warehouse kind of thing. It's not required. Well, last but one column row is important. This is DB size. In case of OLTP system, the DB size is 100 MB to GB, say 100 GB, say for example. But in case of warehouse, since it's time variant and non-volatile in nature, the data volume will be 100 GB or TB. In case of big data, although big data is not only dependent on volume, but the data volume will be more than this. So you can think of for big data analytics, we can make use of data warehouse instead of database. Data warehouse can cater the requirement in that way. 100 GB to 100 TB data can be placed over data warehouse. No. Why? I'm coming to that point. In a multi-dimensional data model of the data warehouse, as I said, 2 types of tables will be there. One is fact tables, another one dimension tables. Say fact table means what are the fact you would like to get from the OLTP system, whatever you have designed. Say for example, in a system, they would like to get the profit margin of the organization. At time series analysis on profit, that means sale minus your expense. That information they would like to get in a time series. Now, initially, it will give you the consolidated one, total profit. Now, you can drill down it to get this profit year-wise. Then you can once again drill down it to month level. And all on a sudden, from the time series, you found on say January 2021, the profit was not up to the mark. There is somehow there is a problem that is not consistent. In that case, you can drill down up to date level, and from there you may find the expenses get increased, and that's why the profit margin was low at January. So why this expense get increased on January 2021? You may drill down that critical success factors of your organization, because it's subject oriented. On a particular subject you are designing it, so it is important. Next thing is grain, that is atomic level of data. As I said, from time series analysis, you would like to drill down up to lowest level of granularity. So if your data lowest level of granularity is day, in that case you can drill down up to day, right? If you are preserving the data, summed up data, which is up, which can give you the information up to month level. In that case, you cannot expect the drill down will be done up to day level. So you have to define this atomic level of data, that is lowest level of granular at the very beginning. Dimension, what are the dimension from where you can get some information like purchase, like I mean your this thing, time series, like location, etc. That you to define prior. And measure means the facts what you would like to get, measurable quantity of that fact is called measures. Uh, Design schema, star schema, snowflake schema, and fact constellation. The pictorial information is there. From picture I am explaining it. In case of star schema, one fact table is there. Say from here you can see you would like to get the quantity and amount. So this is the fact table. This quantity and amounts are the measures, and these are the dimension. Expense is an expense is that one dimension table. Another one is department dimension table. Another one is time dimension table. That means there will be 3 dimensions and 2 measures. So it's a multi-dimensional kind of thing. Using star schema, you can design it. Another one concept is snowflake, where this dimension table is also split into another one child dimension table. That means dimension table is normalized. So it is snowflake, just like snowflake, one fact table, more than one dimension table, and one dimension table is split into child dimension table as well. Fact constellation, in case of fact constellation, one dimension table is shared by more than one fact. But generally, this type of design is most suitable for generic application. Well, so far I have covered. Achha, 5 operations are there: roll up, drill down, slice, dice, pivot. I did not to explain. How you can visualize the data. Whatever data is in front of you, you can drill down up to any level in a specific dimension. You can get the information. That is called drill down. Obviously, similar way, it's not similar in reverse way. You can roll up, like day level information you are getting, you can roll up and get the month level information. Slice means instead of say in your OLAP system, the data is starting from 2010 to 2020 is available. You would like to get the information on 2011, say for example. So you can slice it. You can make a slice of it. And once again, for 2011, you would like to get the information for Jharkhand state. So you can make a cube. That means you are cutting the entire cube into a smaller cube, which is named as dice. You apply 2 restrictions in 2 dimensions. And last one is pivot, which is just interchange of x coordinate and y coordinate. I need not to explain it because time is short. Well, so up to this slide, I have explained flat file based system, how data can be managed using flat file based system, database management system, that is the paradigm shift from flat file based system to that. Then another one, metamorphosis, which is data warehouse, and BI, business intelligence, how the data can organize in this way. Now, next point, I'm coming to big data analytics. So why this data warehouse or database or flat file based system is not suitable for big data analytics? That is the most important point, right? This is a definition. And Professor, definition by Professor C.R. Rao. I will share the document. You can note it down, but for theory purpose it's okay, but practical purpose it's not that much important. You have to understand the concept and how this big data is managed in a real scenario. That is important. So I'm skipping this slide. See, what is big data? As I told you, big means obviously the data volume will be huge, but your conventional data warehouse system can manage up to 100 TB data. So apparently it can look in this way. OLAP system, conventional OLAP system can manage the big data sources. Probably no, because the data volume can be anything, and the series is 1 byte means binary digit, 8 bits means 1 byte, 1024 equals 1 kilobyte, megabyte, gigabyte, terabyte, petabyte, exabyte, zettabyte. It can grow up in any. There is no restriction, right? So 2 to the power n is the limit. There is no limit as such. So you cannot expect in this way. Why? Because the usual characteristics of big data is voluntary data generation. Probably in case of OLTP and WellAP, we have designed this that structure to collect a specific type of data, but big data is generated voluntarily. Say for example, in a shopping mall, different persons are visiting, right? They are purchasing something. So obviously one OLTP system is there which can give you the information about what are the items purchased by a particular person who visited that place at which point of time, right? But some other information, how many steps that person taken to go into the mall, and how much time they spend in the mall, etc. kind of information, probably no design is there to give you that kind of information. But that kind of data can populate it automatically from where you can give some idea if some sort of analysis can be done based on which you can take further decision. You have to increase the space of the mall, or you have to increase the number of gates, or the number of escalator is not sufficient. That kind of something can be generated from that data. So data generation is voluntary in nature, unintended usage. So initially, when we are collecting the data, we don't know really what we will do with the data. But later, during analysis, you may find out some interesting result which will be really useful. Say, for example, uh, in recent election of West Bengal, you can remember one person is famous in this area, Prashant Kishore, who did some sort of analysis. And what kind of analysis they are basically doing is very interesting. It's called emotion analysis. So what they are doing, say in WhatsApp group or in Facebook, etc. Something they are generating, some meme they are generating and sharing. Obviously, whenever you are getting that meme, you may be in favor of that meme or not. Either you will share it in a group, or you will drop it in your place, or you will say do some sort of modification in that meme and you can forward. So basically, you are doing something with that. That is not important. But what action you are actually taking with that meme, that is important. That is basically reflecting your emotion. And then emotion and sentiment analysis can be done on that data, which from where they can really guess something uh, where you are going to cast your vote. You know? So that kind of thing is also possible. So usage is really not known. Unintendedly, you did it. You never mentioned that you are in favor of this political party or etc. But from emotion analysis and sentiment analysis, they can get some idea about this. Or say one person is they got some information like uh, why everybody is gathering in a particular place and accessing some website. What does it mean? From there, they can take some get some conclusion. Ki, probably on free internet connection is available in that place, and that's why persons are coming to that place and taking advantage of it. Now they can take some decision. Well, now next one is cheap sojournite. You need not to really do any design. Any design team is dedicatedly doing it, not like that. So it's very cheap, and that's why getting generated automatically. Unstructured data, obviously unstructured data, because nobody defined any structure for this. It can be text, it can be pictures, audio, video, click stream. So you have to have the processing capability of heterogeneous data at the end. High dimensionality. Dimensionality is a curse for this thing. You really don't know how many dimensional data will be preserved. And sixth point is pretty important. Sixth point is relentless generation. Relentless generation. It will generate automatically without any human intervention, and the data populated will be relentless in nature. And that is important. Why? Data warehouse is not suitable for preserving big data analytics data. Why? Because by definition, data warehouse is subject oriented, non-volatile, and time variant. See, non-volatile and time variant. If the data generation is relentless, in that case, it cannot be. That means it's a mixed mode in nature. WellTP as well as WellAP. In WellAP, simply we are doing some sort of analysis. In WellTP, we are simply preserving the data. But in big data analytics, data will populate in runtime and analysis will be done in real time. So it is very difficult. It's not pre-process kind of thing. Now, this is some idea about the relentless data. Only 30 minutes left. So let me skip this slide. concerns with mining as usual. Well, whatever I explained, I mean, what kind of analysis you are doing and what kind of extract you are getting, what are the facts you are getting from the data is nothing but data mining. Data mining, probably you know, mining means you would like to do some sort of, just like mining, diamond mining or gold mining kind of thing. You are digging and you are extracting the desired result from there. So, for doing mining this OLAP or gathered structured data with some function for conversion of the values is important. In traditional data mining process, data loaded into a stable, infrequently updated database. What I mentioned in OLAP system, stable means non-volatile in nature and infrequently updated. That means it's time variant. The same kind of thing we have to do, but those restrictions are not there. You cannot expect it will be stable. You cannot expect the data will be updated infrequently. The data can be updated or data can be populated relentlessly. So it's very difficult. And big data analytics, perception is like this. Big data is actually like elephant. Somebody is assuming it's a trunk. Somebody is assuming it's a tail. So we need not to understand the entire thing, but as per our requirement, how we can gather the data. Analysis is, let us put it separately. Analysis can be done later, but in this session, my intention is to preserve the data, big data for analysis, and in which way, how it will help us to preserve. So analytics ability, I don't know whether you heard those terms. It's called 3V or 4V kind of thing for big data analytics. Most of the people explain it in that way. So in case of this thing, the V's are G's in big data analytics are number one, volume. So volume is huge, as I mentioned. Velocity. It means time, the data generation velocity. It's relentlessly generating the data. Now variety. Obviously, the data will be various. Like it may be picture, it may be movie, it may be textual information, it may be anything. Then is veracity. You don't know from where it's getting generated. Now security, privacy, and ethics. All the information you cannot collect without permission of the person. Say, for example, whenever you are putting on CCTV at a place, it's mandatory you have to put a notice there. When you are under CCTV surveillance or your picture or video is getting captured. Otherwise, it's unethical. And next one is high dimensionality. It's a curse. Obviously, it's curse because your intention is to get some information about the trunk, and this elephant is in front of you. So obviously, you have to reduce the dimension to make it suitable for your purpose, and then you can make use of it. Incidental endogeneity, spurious correlation. Sometimes you can come to a wrong conclusion also because the facts are not known, and if the facts are known, in that case, easily you can manage it through structural database. But in case of big data analytics, you are getting something which is not known initially. You collected the data later. In time of analysis, you get some result which is really useful. So P in big data is very important. Volume, velocity, veracity, variety are important, but the most important thing, value. This is actually value is defined by Oracle itself. This value means at the end you should get something which is actionable intelligence, right? No perception based something. So at the end you have to give some idea. Say for election prediction, if at the end they could give you the information like probably you are going to get this percentage of vote or probably you are going to get this many seats, that is important information. Otherwise, uh, that is useless. So value is important. Volume, velocity, veracity, variety, you have to maintain. But at the end, you should get the value out of it. Well, now coming to the real point, how this data can be managed. For big data analytics, I don't know whether you have heard about this. And one conventional system is called Hadoop. Hadoop is for managing data, and I am going to explain it. If you, I'm assuming you have no question. If you have question, you just note it down. I will later ask you. Let me go through this Hadoop. What is Hadoop and how it can manage the data, and why it is more reliable than conventional system, right? Number one, it's huge, as I mentioned, few thousands of machines. So, ma'am, who asked me a few minutes ago in the session on AIML, he, whether AIML is a costly affair or not. Yes, it's costly if you really want to apply your own infrastructure, apply for your own infrastructure. In that case, it will be costly because few thousand machines you have to maintain with higher capacity, and because you have to preserve, you are expecting the data volume will be in terms of petabyte or even more. At the same time, processing a petabyte data is not very easy, right? If you want to make simply a select query, say uh, you can imagine at that time when uh, 10 plus 2 result is there, and you would like to get the result, use your roll number, you have that experience how much time it could take, because data volume is huge and number of hit is more, right? The similar kind of arrangement will be there. So processing thousands of job, that means thousands of requests on each task, and the data volume is in petabyte is not very easy. So more than one machine will be there, job will be distributed on more than one machine, and that will be processed, right? So if the job is distributed amongst 5 machines, what they will do eventually, they will try to find out the marks of a particular roll number. So suppose you have n number of machine, M1, M2, M3, M4 up to Mn. Now M1 is responsible for finding the result for person X1. So query for X1 should land in machine M1, and the data related to X1 should get available in that machine M1. How you can ensure that? That means entire data set will be chopped into multiple blocks, and which blocks will be made available, distributed amongst the machines, such that whenever one query will be processed by that machine, that my machine should get the data locally available. Got my point? So first point is HDFS, Hadoop distributed file system. That is file system which will distribute the data amongst the machines. Initially, you can remember one concept was there called grid computing. In grid computing, what happened? In grid computing, more than one machines are connected, and whenever you want to process something, that process is placed in a particular node headed by one mother node, and whenever the job is over, mother node will take the responsibility. But the problem was getting job done. It's good if you can distribute the job amongst more than one machine. But if the data is not available locally, in that case, you have to transmit the data from one node to another node, which will take huge amount of time. Why? Because the data volume is huge. So data transfer will take huge amount of time, and that is good enough to, you damage your this processing time performance. So Hadoop distributed file system uh, does something which will help you to get better processing performance with better data manageability. So it's one step ahead of grid. And map review system is another one system by which you can program on that HDFS. I'm coming to those two one by one. HDFS need not cover well. In Hadoop distributed file system stores files in block across many nodes. Blocks, as I mentioned earlier, blocks. So if you want to preserve a particular file of petabyte in size, the file will be chopped into different blocks, and those blocks will be placed in multiple nodes in the cluster. Replicates the blocks across the nodes for durability. Now, one block, say for example, a block size will be 64 MB. Typically, it will be 64 MB in size. Now, one block will be available in a particular machine. Scenario is not like that. That data will be replicated in more than one node. So data volume will get increased, but it will ensure the availability of the data all the time. It may happen when more than one node is connected. It may happen one node somehow destroyed. In that case, probably the data resides on that node that will be lost. So to overcome that problem, HDFS managed it in this way: one block kept in more than one node, and one master node is there. It's called name node. That master node actually responsible for distributing the data, maintaining the consistency, etc. And data node is responsible for execution, final execution of the job, preserving the data dedicated for that machine. Well, a pictorial representation is like this. This is a name node. These are you can say 7 machines are there. So 6 machines are treated as data nodes, and 1 machine is treated as name node. So block of data, say like this. When you want to put a file, it will be chopped into multiple blocks. Here, 3 blocks you can see: pink, black, gray, and yellow. So this file will come into the name node in this way. Name node will be responsible for chopping it. Now, name node will put one by one block in more than one node. As I mentioned, it will put the block of data in not a single node. It will put it in more than one node. Why? If one machine get destroyed, automatically you can get data from remaining 2. That is the intention. So in this way, 3 is the default value for HDFS. The block will be distributed in more than only 3 nodes by default. You can modify it, but this is the default structure. So name node, after distributing the block in different nodes, name node will preserve the information in this way. The pink block is kept in 1, 4, and 5 node. 1, 4, and 5. Why this information is, this metadata is important? Because whenever one person would like to read that file, it will basically preserve, it will try to access the machine which is closer to the name node, number 1, which is comparatively free. Right. See, this pink data and gray data block is available in 5. If during reading the file for gray data, already node 5, data node 5 is assigned for that job. For pink data block, obviously this name node will avoid to assign this job to data node 5. It will assign the job to 1 or 4, because pink node is already available on 1 or 4 also, right? So it's the responsibility of name node. This is the distribution mechanism. This is the reading mechanism. See, read file already I explained, and read time depends on transfer rate into number of machine. If somebody would like to read the data which is not available on that node, in that case obviously the time will be more. Why? Because they have to transfer the data from some other node. Now another one, if somehow one node get destroyed, what will happen? It will automatically switch the task to the next node. Fault tolerant, as I mentioned, in since the data volume is huge, fault tolerance is important, handles node failure easily. How? Say one node get destroyed. Node number 2. So in node number 2, one gray and one yellow was there. Right? So what they will do, they will start reading it from some other. That's not an issue. But it will start doing self-healing also, rebalances file across cluster, because for pink, 3 presence of the node is there, but for gray it's not there. How they will manage it? They will automatically make the copy into 2 remaining nodes. That is called self-healing. So data block will be made available, and metadata will be automatically modified in the name node. Scalable, obviously it's scalable. If you need not to do anything, you put the name node single, you can add data node at any point of time. So this is HDFS, all about HDFS. Another 15 minutes. It's good enough. Let me explain you this map reduce part. I will give you one or two examples on map reduce. It is actually a programming paradigm, a bit difficult. Implementation is readily available in Java and Python. So you just focus on the logic. You need not to think about the programming, what will be the language, how you have to write the program, need not to think about it. In MapReduce, the concept is initially the preloaded local input data. So this is the preloaded local input data. As I mentioned, node 1, node 2 means data node. In data node, the block of data is available. These are the block of data, right? And next one is the mapping process. Mapping process means you have written a code. This is the mapper. This is the mapper. There are 2 codes you have to write. Interface for the 2 are available in Java. One is called mapper, another one is called reducer. So this mapping process is written by you. by implementing the interface mapper for Java, right? Now this mapping process will do what? It will process the data in the data node and it will give the output. Only that is the responsibility of the mapper. It's just like HPC cluster of thing. You have more than one processor, right? And every processor has more than one core. So whenever you are assigning a job, operating system will try to make distribute it evenly amongst all the cores to get the best performance. Similarly, this data are passing through the mapping process to give you the mapped output. Now, next point is, this is the first part. Second part is value exchanged by shuffle process. So you just remember, one is mapper, second one is Hadoop shuffle. What is Hadoop shuffle? It will shuffle the data amongst the node 1, node 2, node 3. Now, reducer will reduce it. The process you can, I mean, in dictionary term, you can think it in this way. It's called scatter gather method. Initially, it will scatter everything and then it will gather. So let me give you an example. From example, you will understand in a better way. Only 3 points you can note it down. One is mapper, another one is Hadoop shuffler, third one is reducer. This is the example. Try to understand. Just concentrate for 2-3 minutes more. In this case, just like any table, A, B, C are the column, and rows are R1, R2, R3, R4, up to R20 are the rows, right? Initially, as I already mentioned, name node will chop the data into different blocks of 64 MB. See, let us assume R1, R2, R3, R4, R5, 5 rows of data is actually 64 MB. So this is the first block. Now, this is the second block. This is the third block, fourth block. So 4 blocks are there, right? So these 4 blocks will be placed in 4 nodes, 1, 2, 3, 4. Then it can be assumed as split 1, split 2, split 3, split 4. Why split? Because in one node, it is expected one split will be assigned to one map. But it may happen, say for example, uh, every node consists of more than one split. There is 2 block is there. In that case, obviously, every map is responsible for processing 2 blocks of data. Here it's 1 to 1. They are fortunate to process only 1. I think it is clear. I cannot get the feedback. That is the major problem. Anyway, I'm going to the next slide. If you have doubt, you just note it down. In the second slide, once again, the entire data set chopped into 4 blocks. And if that you see, only 2 nodes are available, and that's why 2 blocks are placed in a single node. Scalability factor is there. If you have more than 4 nodes, in that case, blocks will be distributed amongst the node. But you have only 2 nodes, so you don't have any option. You have total 4 blocks, and you have 2 nodes. So every node will get responsibility of 2 blocks. And split 1 means 2 blocks residing in a single node. Now that will be assigned to the map 1. So map 1's responsibility will be increased. Initially it was 1 to 1, now it becomes 1 to 2. So this is for example, or this split can be this in this way also. It's not necessary sequentially the blocks will be placed in a node. 1 and 3 placed in a single node and 2 and 4 placed in a second node. That is also possible. But ultimately, eventually, one map is responsible for processing 2 blocks which are named as a single split residing in a single node. So logical function, as I already mentioned, mappers and reducers. Developers write map and reducer function, then submit a jar to the Hadoop. You need not to bother about it. If you really want to programming in this domain, in that case, you can directly write to me. I can help you with some resources, or you can take help of internet. Directly mapper and reducer interfaces are available, and their implementations is also there. Already I explained. I did not to explain. Okay. So flow is HDFS block to map task to Hadoop engine, and Hadoop engine will shuffle and sort the map output. Hadoop engine will reduce the task and reduce processing. Why this kind of complexity? I mean, what kind of advantage we will get? Data distribution is okay, we can understood. but applying MapReduce, what kind of performance improvement we are getting? I'm coming to that point. See, there is a concept called key value pair. Once again, if you have idea about Java collection class, then in that case you can remember there is a key value concept, list and map. There is another one thing, iterator kind of concept. Anyway, key value pair means here a record is passed as a key value pair. They are processing everything in key value pair mode. There is no row column kind of concept, key value. So see, R1, R2, R3, R4, R5 of the rows having 3 column values 1, 2, 3, 2, 3, 5, etc. etc. So input format will be like this. If this row can be identified with row ID 0 and second one can be identified as 10, third one can be identified as 20, in that case 0, 10, 20, 30, 40. These are the key for each rows. And the entire row value, that means which consists of R1 as well as 1, 2, 3 is treated as value. So key value pair means 0, R1, 1, 2, 3. So this is a block, and whenever your node is executing that split for a particular map 1, in that case map 1 will get the data in this way, key value pair. Got my point? Now how map 1 will process this data and what is the problem definition? Problem definition is here. If the second column is an odd number, if the second column is odd number, second column means, see, the row 1 consists of R1, 1, 2, 3. So 4 columns are there, right? So second column means, second column is this one, 1, 2, 2, 6, 1 is the second column. So if the second column is an odd number, if the second column is odd number, yes, in the first one, second column is odd number. In that case, what we have to do? Don't do anything. Oh, we need not to do anything. If the second column is an even number, well, here second number is even 2. In that case, generate as many pairs as the number of even divisors of the value in second column. Well, so for the second row, you can see the value of second column is 2, which is even. So how many even divisor of 2 is there? 2 can be divided by 1 and 2, where 2 is the only even divisor, right? So we have to create a single pair, and pair consists of what? The value, even divisor of the value in second column. The key is the divisor, so it will be result will be key value pair only, where key is the divisor and the value is the value in third column. Well, for this one, even divisor is 2, so in output key will be 2 and value will be the value of third column, that means 3. Similarly, coming to the next one, once again, value of the second column is 2, which is even, and number of even divisor is only 1, so one pair will be there, where key will be 2 and value will be 4, which is in the third column, right? So I will share the slide, you can have a look at it. Similar fashion, in case of 6, say for example, in case of fourth row, 6 is even, number of divisor of 6 are 1, 2, 3 and 6, right? 4 divisors are there. Out of that only 2 even divisors are there, 2 and 6. So 2 pair we have to create it. What will be the 2 pairs? Number 1, key value will be first even divisor, that is 2, and value will be the value in third column. So 2, 4 is the first key value pair. And second one is 6 is the even divisor. So 6 will be the key value and 4 is the value, key value pair. So in this way we can arrange it. So task of map, you can easily understood, it will process a single block as per the definition it's written in map 1. Entire thing can be processed by a single process, but instead of that we splitted the job into multiple nodes, and mapper are the functions what is supposed to be executed on the data. Done. Obviously the time will be reduced because instead of it processing the entire data in a single node, it will be processed in multiple nodes. Now coming to the next one, after processing this execution of map 1, map 2, map 3, the data will be handed over to the Hadoop Shuffle, and what it will do, interestingly, this Hadoop Shuffle will club up the data based on the key. Hadoop Shuffle is not interested on the value. Mapper was interested on the value, but Hadoop Shuffle is interested on the key. So wherever 2 is the key, Hadoop Shuffle will try to put them together. So 2, 3, 2, 4, 2, 9. In this way, for example, in case of 4, if 4 is the key, only in 2 cases 4 are the key. One case is in map 2, another one is map 3. So 4, 5 and 9 will be another one output of Hadoop Shuffle. So second stage is very clear. First step is how mapper is processing the data. Second step is how Hadoop Shuffle is shuffling the data. Now, third part, there is the reducer. So ultimate our intention is to get the group by values. Group by values. Our intention is to get the group by values. So reducer is doing what? The 2 reducers are there. Output of Hadoop Shuffle is assigned evenly into 2 reducers residing into 2 separate nodes, and the reducer will do what? For every key, it will sum up the values, and output will be like 238, 64, 414, 89. I think it is a bit clear. Another one example, I will stop with this example because I'm running short of time. Earlier, problem definition was a fictitious problem. Here, you would like to count the words. Say few sentences are there. You would like to identify the unique words and number of occurrences. That is your problem definition, right? Say first sentence is Hadoop uses map reduce. So 4 words are there. Second sentence is there is a map phase. And third one is there is a reduce page. So these are 3 sentences. Let us assume these 3 sentences are available in 3 nodes, 3 splits. So just like any parser, initial phase, the entire sentence will be tokenized into different words, and occurrences are written here. See, so this is the task of the mapper. Map will tokenize the sentence and it will assign a value for it. Value means occurrences of that one in that level. So Hadoop occurrence 1 uses 1, map 1, reduce 1. In this case, there is a map phase. There 1 is 1, A1, map 1, phase 1. So mapper task is doing this one, tokenizing the sentence and giving you the count of it. Now reducer, what reducer will do? Reducer is operating on the key, and key is basically the words, right? So reducer will try to assemble them. For every key, it will try to club the data. So in this way, see, when A is the key, in that case, the key value pair of 3 nodes, only 2 values are there, A1 and A1. So for key A, 2 occurrences are there. Hadoop Shuffler will put them together A11. Right? Why? Because Shuffler split it into 3 buckets, and assuming that all the key with values A to I will be placed here, all the values starting with J to Q will be placed here, all the values starting with R to Z will be placed here. So reducer task is over. This Shuffler task is over. Now reducer will do what? Reducer will simply sum up the values against each key. So A2 Hadoop 1 is to map to, etc., etc. As a consequence, what we are getting from the sentences, we are getting the number of unique words and number of occurrences, right? So this is the advantage of MapReduce. I don't want to explain it because already it's 12:30. This is another one example how you can aggregate or how you can make some queries. So designing MapReduce algorithm, you have to think on 2 things. One, why data set, which data set should be the key, what data should be the value. Reading and map processing cost you have to consider. So you are going to process the data which is available on your split, on your node. Communication cost should be minimum. That means dependency on multiple data sets should not be there. Otherwise, you have to traverse through one node to another node. Processing cost at reducer. Reducer processing cost is the most, and load balancing. All reducers should get similar volume of traffic. Say, for example, in the previous example, you are splitting the data in where the words are keys are starting with A to J to Q, R to Z. If you not split it in this fashion, in that case, it may happen one node will get all the words and another one node will be empty. In that case, your job will not distribute it properly. So during design, you have to keep it in mind for load balancing. Should not happen that only one few machines are busy. Well, already I explained. So this is map reduce. So at the end, what we got, what kind of data can be preserved in which type of infrastructure, what is HDFS, how data can be distributed amongst the node, what is the scalability factors, and what kind of program will help you to reduce the processing cost also. Map reduce, right? Few examples are there like PM, Pradhan Mantri Fasal Bima Yojana, where this type of data volume is there, there is no limit of data. PM Kisan, another one issue where all the Kisans are supposed to get the benefit out of it. Naturally, the data volume will be huge. Agri Udan, and few worldwide implementation like this thing, Agri. This is related to water. DreamPy, see, you can have a look at this. This is the dynamic research evaluation for management and implemented on Python. GCAN. GCAN its purpose is gender responsive and climate resilient agriculture for nutrition. Guardian, this is another one thing, agricultural research data innovation acceleration network. This is another one cloud where you can get data, access of data for your processing. Massagro Maize, very specifically for maize, they are doing some sort of big data analytics. Nutrition early warning system, this is another one initiative. SWIM for water management, that is water source resource management basically. Trace genomics, this is interesting. They are processing genomics data of the microbes available in your soil. Any processing of genomics data means nowadays the concept is processing the genomics data with NGS pipelines, which is called next generation sequencing. And NGS data processing, as for 5 nodes in the pipe. So instead of 2 nodes like mapper and reducer, 5 nodes will be there. Implementation of this kind of genomics processing will be really interesting using big data. And somebody is doing it in worldwide at least. That's all. Now you can ask if you have some questions. Sorry for extending my session. It's already 12:33. Raji?
Yes, yes. So, participants, do you have any query? You must be having so many queries.
Naturally, it's a difficult topic. Big data analytics is a difficult topic. And some background knowledge is also a must.
Yeah.
Anyway, I tried to cover it from scratch, from 0 to something, 0 to
Yeah. Your presentation was good.
I don't know whether it's really fruitful to them or not.
In future, it will be fruitful.
maybe. If really they want to implement, and some student or some research worker is there who is really interested to do something in this area, I'm really interested because for last couple of years I am associated with this activity. They can write to me directly. My email ID is there.
So if there is no query, the PowerPoint presentation of Mr. Ritesh Mukherjee will be shared.
Right.
And later on, you can have discussion with him, individual discussion. He may be happy to have interaction with you. And
yes.
Riteshji, I must extend my heartfelt thanks to you for agreeing to our proposal and giving a nice presentation for the benefit of our participants. Thank you, sir. Thank you very much.
Thank you all.
Now, Now, participants, we break for lunch.